Hello and welcome to another episode here on my channel. My name is ChaosMole and today we're watching the Power On, the Story of Xbox Chapter 1, The Renegades, which is the first part of a 6-part series on the story of Xbox. Normally I am not really a fan of those because they are made by, well, the company who made the games and, well, the console, and that is Microsoft. So most of the time it's a lot of PR talk and it's basically just clapping yourself on the back and be like, yeah, we did good. Oh, there were lots of mistakes. Yeah, but we did good. We did good. And it's like, yeah, I don't like to watch that. But I have heard from actual people who watched this already that that is not the case, and Microsoft and Xbox are actually very critical about the things they did in the past. And that is exactly what we will watch here. Keep in mind, this is a very lengthy video, and I haven't seen this yet. Also, I might actually do a TLDR video afterwards for all the people who don't have the time to watch a 41-minute long video, and then you can watch that instead, if I decide to do that. We will see. But without further ado, let's watch this. And I will pause in between sometimes when I really have something to say, which
Video
cannot wait.
games are one of the most powerful mediums ever created. This merger of imagination and technology has introduced a fundamental evolution.
If you have never heard of video games,
And now represents a culture of 2.4 billion gamers connected worldwide.
Yes!
But just 20 years ago, the console that kicked off the era of online gaming in the living room almost didn't exist.
that first
You
Xbox
ever want to make
design.
hardware?
No, that's one thing that we decided not to do.
The idea that Microsoft could ever create a game console was
A year
seen as bit of a
later.
joke.
Microsoft.
They wear khakis and they're boring and they're Office and they're Windows.
Might as well call it Nerd Box, right?
I can't imagine how it could be better.
A new console was seen as a risky bet
There it is.
Yeah,
at a company not accustomed to losing.
You're proposing taking money away from Windows in order to fund some game system?
That is an insane business to get into.
It was fear, uncertainty,
especially
and doubt.
because with the PlayStation 2 dominating already, Nintendo
This
being
is
up
the
there, and
story
even
of how a
Sega
passionate group of gamers
still being
forever changed the course of a
relative
corporate
prominent.
titan.
They saw the future.
Broadband internet to the television.
So,
Like, you can
Yeah.
do that?
And Bill says,
We should do this. We should let these guys do this.
And the journey to get that controller into our hands.
This thing is going to be the most badass thing you can
the
imagine.
Duke. I'm sorry, the Duke is just a
Think about the way
shitty
you can tell
controller.
stories with that.
I know that some people are like, no, the Duke is actually really cool. No,
We
man.
need this. This
Look,
is like the
I
hotline for us.
have big murder hands, you know,
Take it for granted
but
now, but back then this was like science fiction.
nah.
We weren't sure how we were gonna do it.
Xbox, watch TV.
Oh, God.
Oh god.
Gamers are not going to be tolerant of any level of bull at all.
The risk here
Let me-
was enormous.
You're always
Double that a
just
bit.
one catastrophic bug away from not making it.
I remember thinking, hey, maybe we're in over our heads.
A little bit.
There's a new contender in the video game wars.
Xbox is going to be the future.
Video game wars. Oh man.
Taking over the living room.
Limitless, connected digital entertainment.
You guys never understood. The company is going to face fierce competition. Sniper!
Yeah.
It's a ticking time bomb.
Makes me very nervous to actually play this for you.
Xbox getting a major overhaul.
A bold vision for the future of gaming.
This will be very interesting when we are getting to the Xbox One days, because that's where a lot of things just completely fall apart. Ah, the 90s.
Hello, I'm Bill Gates,
Ah.
chairman of Microsoft. In this video, you're going to see the future. Microsoft first came up with the Windows concept back in 1983.
By stealing from Apple.
I'm going to show you real quickly a couple highlights.
Who said
of the
that?
product. The graphics interface is an integral part of this new generation. To take PCs much further than they've gone before.
Oh god, I remember those times. I have been there.
was 27, and I was 27.
We were an amazing young company with an amazing young founder in Bill Gates.
He knew business better than anybody out there, and he also knew technology. He was able to synthesize things that nobody else in the industry could.
It was incredibly fast-moving.
And
it was the
taking
kind of
some
place
ideas here
where
and there from Apple,
people
but
didn't hold back. For someone who just wanted to really let loose and grow and learn, it was an amazing place.
Bill Gates and the team back then were the disruptors, which was exciting and palpable.
We just thought of ourselves kind of the rebels, kind of, you know, where the big companies like IBM were these huge companies, but we were this little rebel group of hackers, you know, doing this cool work.
it's kind of funny when you look at what Microsoft became nowadays.
Where we're going. But that really changed in '95.
Windows 95 has taken over computer stores.
They were online in the middle of the night. Personal computer users packed into stores dying to get their hands on one.
Literally.
Windows 95 launch, it was like a coming out party for the whole company.
Microsoft made a thing that everybody in the world wanted. It was like air to me. It just was. It existed and you needed it.
Today's world, you can't make it without a computer.
It has thousands of programs that some of us may need.
I can run 3 or 4 applications at the same time.
What?
It's so easy. Even a talk show host can figure it out.
And you still can only run one browser because the browser is eating up your DDR RAM.
Every month.
Glad that things haven't changed since then.
It was the most profitable business in the history of the human race. I don't think there's ever been anything remotely like it unless you count the Spaniards going to the New World and like literally hollowing out a mountain made of silver.
Interesting reference.
Has a business relationship with NBC as the most powerful engine in the new age of computers, a giant cash machine, and it strongly disagrees with the government.
In the late 90s, we were sort of the bad guys, the Death Star.
The perception of Microsoft, I think, generally was not great. They were in the middle of the justice monopoly issues.
We were the big gorilla in the room on most subjects. And so people viewed us as sort of the big bad tech company.
I mean,
by 1999, 90%
they had a monopoly.
Computers worldwide used the Microsoft Windows operating system.
Yeah.
They were untouchable, without comparison or viable rival.
Absolutely.
We've been successful
and it never happened.
In the operating system world, built a huge PC business, built Microsoft Office into this big business. We were the tech.
At least when it comes to computers,
Windows
smartphones,
that industry and transformed the
counting.
world. But during that period, disruption was coming from all sides.
For decades, Sony had been a Japanese electronics giant with a history of producing personal and home entertainment hardware.
Oh god, my dad had that camcorder.
In 1994, Sony struck gold with the PlayStation, a gaming console with unparalleled success.
The launch of PlayStation really thrust gaming into popular culture in a big way. And Sony saw an opportunity for gaming to be even bigger and touch entertainment.
What Sony discovered was a console was really a Trojan horse to the living room. And once that device got into the living room, it could be a multimedia entertainment device.
Sony was putting different things into the home. They're putting a hard disk here in like a DVR.
Smart.
Putting
Absolutely
here,
smart back in the day.
A processor here. And if they could connect all those things together, it would be a computer, a potentially existential threat to Microsoft.
And then the PlayStation 2 came around, and the threat was real.
Let me introduce to you the next generation PlayStation technology.
Even before Sony launched PlayStation 2,
I remember that announcement video. That was so business. It has nothing to do with today's gaming shows. It was a strict business shows for investors.
So powerful. That's going to replace the PC.
Sony was showing a slide at trade shows and to our customers of a future home that was full of PlayStations and didn't have any PCs in it.
Which was like shooting cannonballs over Microsoft headquarters.
It was an incredibly arrogant.
I don't think that a lot of people really believed it.
That was a very serious threat.
In the 90s, Microsoft was a paranoid place. And when somebody said Sony's going to put a PC in the living room, that got everybody's attention.
And if Sony was at the point of locking down the living room, what was Microsoft going to do?
Bringing
One
games to
possible
PC.
answer was brewing not from the top
Boo.
executive ranks, but from deep within the Microsoft corporate structure. 4 renegades on the DirectX software team who were working on tech to help developers create games for Windows, and who were united by a fervent belief that games were the future.
I was leading the DirectX development team with one of my colleagues on the marketing side of DirectX, Ted Hasse. You know, the question that we were
The thing
starting
is,
to
it's so funny to
ask
see
is, where
that
was all
basically
this graphics
nearly every
technology
company is
headed?
using DirectX out
Windows
there
had won
for
the
games,
desktop operating system
and
wars.
nobody
So
talks
we're
about
starting
it.
to ask where there could be threats or opportunities in the future. We quickly narrowed down to
It's kind of
games
hilarious.
and an all-encompassing entertainment platform for the living room as being an opportunity for us.
Otto had carefully built a career at Microsoft, and he had already taken a risk because Otto could have been an important programmer in a legitimate Microsoft group like Windows or Office. Instead, he chose to be in this DirectX group because he was passionate about graphics.
Ted and I both had folks on our teams we felt could bring some additional brain power to the conversation, including Seamus Blackley.
How do you describe Seamus? He's just a piece of work. One of the most brilliant people I've ever met.
Besides being a physicist and a really amazing mathematician, Shane has really embodied the heart of what it meant to be a game developer.
When I saw arcade games when I was little, when I saw Computer Space, my first idea was not, I want to play this game for hours. My idea was, how can I make my own thing?
One of Ted's employees was Kevin Bacchus, who had a financial and market analysis background.
Kevin's like a Vulcan in the best possible way. The world is entirely intellectual.
That is correct. We had day jobs for DirectX, but a
It's
lot
like-
of our thinking was how we could build brand new technology.
I'm
that
not sure
was
how to take that.
single-mindedly focused on making the very best games.
4 of us, we played games, and we love games, and we wanted to make them. That really meant something for us.
They were working on DirectX, a set of software tools that standardized
Interestingly
game development
enough,
across PC hardware, and which was readily embraced by PC game developers.
it took so long for
But the
Microsoft
team
to
saw a way
actually
push DirectX further, with an idea that could
believe in video
revolutionize the
games.
foundation
Like,
of
sure, they
console
started to
game
do it
development.
with Halo and, of course, with
Windows and
Xbox.
DirectX, we have the platform that everybody wants to
But
do the work on to make the games. We already
fully
have the
believed in
entire
it?
infrastructure of everything you need to create
I
all
don't
this
think they did
technology
that.
sitting on our platform. If we could only create a single hardware standard, a box designed just to run DirectX, it gave us the idea that we could produce better games than Sony and Nintendo and Sega.
At that time, Japanese game consoles had very proprietary chipsets, and they just didn't work very well for, Western development.
Okay, we have to go here back. Oh my god, the battle begins. PlayStation, how long does it have? Project X, is it for real? Dreamcast, can it be stopped? Nintendo 64, can it survive? I mean, of course, it is always funny to laugh at things when you know the outcome, right? Like, people are looking back at the past and they're reminiscing for hours and hours, like how the past was like, how did nobody see this coming and all that. And it's like, well, then try to predict the future, right? It's not that easy. And looking back at it, sure, I'm laughing at this because we all know the outcome. But as I said, like back in the day, when Sony entered the market against Nintendo and even the Sega Mega Drive back in the day and Sega Saturn, it wasn't even the Dreamcast yet, people were like, huh? PlayStation? Huh? Even when Microsoft entered the room with Xbox, like a lot of people were just laughing at it. They were like, yeah, okay, well, we give them maybe 3 years, at tops 5 years, and they will get just swooped out of the room.
And Sony and Nintendo
So,
and Sega.
At that time,
back in the day,
game consoles had very
this rings
proprietary
very
chipsets,
true.
and they just didn't work very well for Western developers.
Yeah.
The instructions on how to use it would be in Japanese. What the DirectX group was proposing was, there's a better way to do this. We're going to use PC architecture that you're familiar with, which is just going to work out of the gate, so they could spend more time crafting and building their games.
They had an incredibly developer-friendly story. You already know how to write these games. If you've written them for PC, you can write them for console as well. You know, that message was pretty powerful.
For us, this was about advancing the gamer's interests and the game developer's
I
interests.
love that the watermark
which
is still
would
in there
advance
from
Microsoft's interests.
a YouTuber they
So
took
we
this
decided
from.
that this was the right time to try to build support for the idea of Microsoft building a game console. At the same time, nobody ever believed that Microsoft would actually have the audacity to attempt such a thing.
The four of us, we were on a journey to get support for this crazy idea around putting a DirectX-powered box in the living room to deliver interactive content.
Which I can only assume was hard to do.
And get traction on this thing.
We were an annoyance.
Nobody knows who the hell we are. And we were constantly discovering super important people who were roadblocks or who wouldn't get it and who didn't think games were important.
You're proposing taking money away from office development in order to fund some game system?
I can see how people were like,
Dreaded having meetings with us.
No surprise.
Get out of here.
Displacing the stated direction of a company at the scale of Microsoft was not a trivial undertaking.
Yep.
Realizing that who you
Hey,
knew inside
Hitman.
Microsoft was at
Agent
least as
47.
important as what you knew, we brought in the guy who could try to build support for the idea of Microsoft building our game console, Nat Brown.
I had a lot of time spent talking with different teams and working with kind of long-term strategic planning.
Nat had an incredible network of connections. He opened up a lot of doors for us.
Nat was sort of like our Obi-Wan Kenobi, this wizard figure who would show up and go,
Man, he had
"Oh, I
to
know you
die
can call
for
you
the
and talk to
Xbox?
the guys in this division,
Woo.
or that division." He
That's
knew
tough.
the structure to Microsoft.
It's been nothing but a fight to figure out how the place works.
One of the
I can
first
see
things
that.
Nat said was we needed a proper code name.
Something that would plant in people's
Microsoft
heads
is a
and take on
huge
a life
company.
of its own.
Nat said, well, isn't it really a DirectX
So
box?
getting word from A to B
Yeah.
can be hassle.
It's like a DirectX box. That's what it's about.
And we just put up on the board, let's call it the DirectX box.
So we had this
Was too
awkward
long.
thing in our mouths all the time. It was a
Yeah.
DirectX box.
And I remember saying, that's too long.
Too
It's
long.
just Xbox.
Yes.
And we liked that.
That was our code name as a stand-in until we had something better come along.
We built a business case that showed how big this business could be. To get buy-in on that, you have to distribute it. You have to go socialize it. My trick was getting our stuff in front of executives to make them say, I want to understand this business.
Interesting.
The team set their sights on a logical choice. A senior executive who spoke their language. Literally.
Yeah, I'll play real quick. Ed Fries was a Microsoft lifer.
yeah.
He joined as an intern.
Ed had been critical in the development of Office, one of the biggest franchises, even at that time, that Microsoft ever had.
He had this passion for games. He loved games. He programmed a game at a very early age.
When most high schoolers were getting their first minimum wage jobs, Freeze was already cashing royalty checks from his first game.
And they stayed in those jobs forever.
A clone of the hit arcade game Frogger. Aptly named Froggy.
Highly original, as you can see. Yeah. When I left Office to go run the games group, people told me I was committing career suicide.
Thank you, that's it. Good night.
They said, why would you leave Office, one of the most important parts of the company, to go work on something no one cares about? And when I got there running the games group, I found out they were right. No one cared about what I was doing, and that was awesome.
In 95,
Can be helpful.
the games group was really small. It was like 20 people.
yeah.
In a lot of these tech companies, there's not as much respect given for those other disciplines.
Microsoft at the time didn't care very much about games. I think we were just more of a hobby.
We were gamers.
Which is
working
kind of
in
funny. They did the
the
same
bowels
mistake
of
back
some
then with
Microsoft
Mixer
corporate
and the
building.
streaming
Our
world.
goal at the time was to push Windows
Like,
as a
Mixer,
gaming
in my
platform.
opinion, completely failed because they had the wrong people at the helm who didn't understood or cared for what streaming was.
after Windows 95 launched, we had to wear
It was a
these
management
t-shirts that said,
issue.
Microsoft knows games.
You know, it was obvious. We didn't really know games, otherwise we wouldn't have had to put it on our shirt, you know what I mean?
Choose your favorite form of world domination in Age of Empires.
But after a couple of years, we
Vololo.
launched Age of Empires.
It was kind of crazy what a fascination that game became.
Oh,
It was one of the
yeah.
signature PC strategy games for years.
Yeah.
That was actually a huge success for us, and we started to do some
Cool, Aussie.
acquisitions, and we were growing our publishing business.
As we started to ship more quality games, we finally got to the point where we were respected in Microsoft, and people were like, okay, Microsoft actually does know what it's doing when it comes to games.
Ed took a broken games business and fixed it and made it profitable and found a way to do it at Microsoft. These are difficult double black belt Aikido corporate moves.
I saw the Coke Light there. It's like the drink in the gaming business in the 90s. Everyone has like a Coke Light standing around somewhere.
Gates, and yet Fries himself wasn't satisfied.
Our PC market share was growing into the teens, and at the same time, we weren't doing anything in the console space, and that, to me, seemed like a bit of a waste. You know,
Yeah.
there's this huge market out there. One day, these guys from the DirectX team walked into my office, and they pitched me on...
We heard you like games.
Xbox. And basically what they pitched
Let's
was
talk about our Lord and Savior,
I
the
thought,
Xbox.
oh, this is great. This is like a bridge for me to get to the console business.
This box that will run a native version of DirectX, which is the part of Windows that's really focused on the game developer, was revolutionary.
It's going to be easy to port to this machine, easy to take my games and make them run.
It's
Unlike
basically
running
the
on
interface
PlayStation
between
at that
your
time, or
games
Nintendo
and your hardware,
machine that were just
to
very
put it
alien
simple.
hardware compared to a PC.
Ed understood all this game development is happening on the PC. We wanted to make a console that was specifically designed to be easy and fun to make games on. And if the most creative people did their best work on your platform, that's really good business. That's a good idea.
Basically, I said, you know, I'm in. I like this idea. I want to help you guys.
The DirectX team, these were troublemakers, upstarts. They didn't have these reputations that Ed had as sort of born and bred to work at Microsoft.
They didn't really have any political clout within the company. It was, I think, a big win for them to get me on their side, from my point of view.
I can see that,
This
yeah.
unlikely alliance would bring the
Very
Xbox
much.
team closer to the biggest test of all, pitching Bill Gates. And that opportunity would come sooner than anyone expected.
Oh yeah.
When Sony unveiled the PlayStation 2, they started talking about how they were going to be the death of the PC.
A new concept that we'd like to introduce going into the next century, our EE, the emotion engine.
It was like, what a great name. Holy crap, you know, an emotion engine.
And our new CPU architecture significantly outperforms even the fastest Pentium 3 architecture that's in the market today.
They showed beautiful fighters, models twirling around. They showed 1,000 delicate rose petals falling from the sky to show just how many polygons, just the raw math that this behemoth of a device could process. And guess what? It's got the power of 1,000 suns behind it.
For Microsoft, that really crystallized what the stakes were.
Kinda,
Bill
yeah.
asked the DirectX team to do an analysis of these claims that Sony had made.
And the success gives them the right to do it.
As you can imagine, getting
Line
on
starts.
Bill's calendar was next to impossible. I felt a huge sense of pressure to make things happen and make them happen quickly.
Yeah.
Otto and Seamus provided a fantastic breakdown, very technical, what the emotion engine did and did not do, which claims were true, which claims were exaggerated. And at the end, they very audaciously slipped in a little mention of the fact that, you know, we could build a console too. And we put together what we thought at the time was a pretty compelling argument.
Ah, some good old
Gates had
framing.
been curious about the viability of a Microsoft console, but it wasn't until mid-March of
Works.
1999, just 1 week after the formal announcement of the PS2, that the possibility was finally starting to percolate amongst the company's elite at its annual leadership retreat.
Semiamu was Bill Gates' annual Think Week to think about strategically what sort of projects did they want to greenlight.
One of the programs that you do at this 3-day offsite is a idea generating effort.
We all sat in a room,
Hmm.
and people could propose a topic for a breakout.
We would write down a question, and we'd stand there with our question in front of us.
People moved around, and everybody voted what topic they wanted to work on.
And the question I wrote that year was, what if the cable companies like AOL and Sony all got together and they all pooled all the subsidies that they were paying to acquire customers?
Fun fact, something the cable companies, especially in the US, try to do to a certain degree.
That's all I said.
It's not a fun fact because it's horrifying.
To the home as a game console, it would be like the comet that hit the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs.
We hit the dinosaurs.
PC.
Yeah.
I got a big line of people behind me on that one, including Bill, and off we went to start talking about it for a couple hours.
And so we had a sort of a 2-hour thrash on pros and cons of video game console. What was the
That's
state of play
cool,
with
man.
Sony?
I love that.
Coming out of there, Gates just called it. He wanted me to look into what we should do about it.
Thompson's big question resonated with Gates, and a call went out to the entire company looking for anyone who could answer.
It was sort of an all-points bulletin to senior managers all over the company saying, anybody working on any of this kind of stuff?
And so in March of '99,
which is funny because it comes from the people who are already working at that.
Company that touched games
Perfect
in
circle.
any way was brought together for a meeting to talk about whether we should have a comprehensive game strategy for the entire company. We took that opportunity to say, listen, not only do we have a perspective on this, we actually have a presentation, a PowerPoint deck that we'd like to share with everybody that says what
we have an office product to show you the new console
Obviously,
product.
that created a great stir at the meeting. Nobody was expecting that. But it was a great surprise to us to find out there were other parts of the company that had aspirations of doing the same thing.
Interesting. Oh, CE.
I was running a team in what was known as the Windows CE group. Windows CE was an operating system designed to run devices like handheld computers or even game consoles. Via a partnership we struck with Sega around their last game console, which was the Dreamcast. We had a pretty capable hardware team.
Some of the guys in that group had worked at 3DO.
Rest in peace, man.
Awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system.
And that was a legitimate game console, albeit one that was not a success in the marketplace, but it was a legitimate console play.
Together, we had the hardware expertise, and we had a proposal for what Microsoft should do next in the console space.
Obviously. These guys think they know how to make a game console and that they should do it instead of us. We opened the door and Bill's interested in a game console, so now they're gonna edge us out and they're gonna step through the door.
They were funded, they had a name, they had leadership, they had executive support.
Their argument was, we already know how to do this. What do these kids know? Go with us.
The DirectX team was young and hungry, full of tech know-how and vision. But Windows CE was well known within the company and had experience on their side.
Suddenly it was a race to try to get the most legitimacy inside of Microsoft, where the winner was going to be the one to bring a game console to market.
And it came to this big battle with Bill.
It was what Microsoft often seemed to do, which is pit two groups of smart people against each other. Classic Bill Gates move.
The stage for the cage match was set. The DirectX and Windows CE teams would battle for the right to make a Microsoft
Oh my god,
game
this reminds me
console
so much of the South Park episode.
To the victors belonged the spoils.
Having Bill in the meeting was always
With Sony versus
fantastic
Microsoft.
thing, as well as increasing the tension at the same time.
Somebody's confused. Somebody's just not thinking.
He was legendary. If you went in and you're full of you get shut down.
No, you don't understand. You guys never understood. You never understood the first thing about this.
So, we tried really hard not to be full of
He is brilliant, but it was a very aggressive, male-dominated
Yeah.
culture. Lots of expletives, super, super smart. But man, if you said something stupid,
Well, I'm done.
Round one.
From my group's perspective, we felt good. We thought they didn't really understand the console space, so frankly, we discounted them a little bit.
Ready?
Oh boy.
We proposed something that aligned very much with how business was done in the game console market as it existed. You got to meet the market where it's at.
The WinCE guys were sort of like preaching the model, but the model isn't very interesting.
Especially not for gamers.
As we're sitting there horrified, they're basically talking about recreating the 3D or making a game console similar to everything else that's on the market.
Yeah.
We're like, you know, you don't enter a market and copy what the competition does exactly. You enter a market to disrupt it, to do stuff they can't do.
Especially in gaming, that is so important.
And they talked about this device and blah, blah, blah. And then the DirectX team got up and presented this vision for
Okay,
Xbox.
there was Dreamcast who
There were two
tried
things in our
something like
plan
that,
we
and
thought absolutely
we all
critical
know where
to
that
the
goes.
success of Xbox and games on Xbox, which had never been done before on a game console. Number one, a hard drive that would be important not only to save information about the player's state and what accomplishments they had done, but also so they could store large amounts of data somewhere and be able to access and change that over time.
I remember there was a big debate.
Large
about
amount
should
of
there be a
data.
hard drive in it,
512
not
megabytes.
a hard drive in it. We were the not hard drive folks. We didn't see the benefit of it.
And everybody does it
The
now.
second component that we thought was absolutely critical was Ethernet. The Sega Dreamcast was basically the first console in history to have any kind of
Too
online
soon, man.
to it. But theirs was dial-up internet using
Yeah.
a modem. That was the technology of the time. We realized that was a short-term solution. What we wanted to do was to point towards the future and integrate Ethernet
Always,
and
always
high-speed broadband
vexed me.
internet
I hate
to
that
the
sound.
television set. We wanted to bet on the future rather than on the present.
The ability to connect machines to each other and to the internet was a core part of the DNA.
We were pitching a very traditional game console, and the Xbox team proposals, I understood it. It sounded to us like, hey, we're going to take a PC and we're going to go build a console out of that, and it just didn't seem credible. It's just not the way the business worked.
Final round.
I wonder
These
what they
two
brought
groups came at
forward
the idea of building a
to
game
win this.
console in very, very different ways. So this meeting got really contentious.
We have to watch these guys like on our plan and tell us it's not going to work and talk to Bill about how game consoles really work. I'm waiting. I'm like, come on, Bill, kill him, shut him down. They're full of He doesn't do it.
I wanted to see the Bill Gates of old. I wanted to see Old Testament Bill Gates, the guy that was famous for throwing people out of meetings and telling them never to come back and telling them that they're the dumbest person in the company. To my horror, Bill sat back and stroked his chin and was very thoughtful. Bill said, well, I think both teams raised some good ideas.
But he didn't seem really that impressed.
In front of that audience, we realized we had to bring out every stop.
The guys from the DirectX side knew that you don't go to a Bill Gates review without showing something really spectacular.
And so leading into this meeting, none of us had slept for like a week.
We made this little device that had relatively old PC technology with a game console-like case on it. And we modified Windows with a hack that like tears open a hole from the bottom up.
Damn.
Exposes the hardware.
That's some commitment, man.
It was a bunch of PC components and a game controller, and it was literally just held together by chewing gum and tape.
Soldering
The
stuff,
power of duct
stripping
tape.
wires.
And this
Saving
was
projects
like,
in
in the back of our car,
1764.
or like, on the floor in a conference room that we were making this stuff.
An ugly timer on it that showed Windows booting up from power.
Booting a PC 20 years ago would take like 3 minutes.
Yep.
It could take longer. It could take 5-6 minutes.
Yep.
These guys played with a PC, pulled stuff out that wasn't necessary, changed the BIOS.
And I turned it on, and so it booted in like 3 or 4 seconds.
Bill Gates almost jumped across the table. He was so excited when he saw that.
Bill immediately looked at us.
Why the doesn't Windows boot like that all the time?
Because we hadn't invented SSD, yes.
Turn it off and do it again. Turn it off and do it again.
I saw his jaw drop. This is a guy who knows more than most people in the world will ever possibly know about.
I believe
PCs.
that.
Saw a PC, probably for the first time, come on immediately.
Yeah.
And we had a software emulator of a PlayStation that had been written for Windows. So you can imagine the executive's surprise when we took a PlayStation disc, stuck it in the Xbox prototype, and immediately Tomb Raider came on screen.
That's piracy.
It bridged the gap. of believability. It made the idea of Xbox seem
I think one of the reasons why
tangible
people
and
bought the
real
PlayStation
and
2
achievable.
also as much as they did, it was so easy to
The DirectX
pirate games
guys
on it.
were stuntmen, and they played the game a lot better.
Same goes for
We,
Xbox.
Frankly, I think
I think it
underestimated
helped.
what they were going to walk into the room with. That meeting wasn't a great outcome for us.
The Windows CE guys literally said, it's not fair, we weren't given the opportunity to make hardware. And somebody said, eliminate him. Well, nobody told them to build hardware, but they did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the Windows CE team, they brought a PowerPoint to a demo fight.
Ooh. That's cool.
Looking back on it now, I really do think that Bill looked at us and saw some aspect of himself or the early days of Microsoft, and that's what he thought was going to work.
Bill's reaction was, you guys are proposing that it's doing good things for Windows, and it's based on Windows, and we get Windows in the living room. That all makes sense. You're proposing that we spend $500 million on it. You need to make this presentation to Steve.
How much do you think this advanced operating
Oh,
environment
God.
is? Wait just 1 minute before you answer. Watch as
Steve is one of the most enthusiastic and energetic people I have
He
ever
is.
met in my life. That energy and
Like the press
enthusiasm that you
conferences
see
he
on
is
stage
giving
is 100% authentic.
are legendary.
At the
Yeah.
time, if the biggest fan of Xbox was Bill Gates, the biggest opponent was Steve Ballmer.
Steve, as a good businessman, liked to make money. He liked, big bold bets, but he liked big bold bets that
He
would
can
pay
win.
off.
Yeah.
This was right at the time when Bill was transitioning the CEO role to Steve. And they had already agreed for a couple years that if Bill came up with some crazy idea that cost a lot of money, that Steve should get a chance to say yes or no on it first. And that led into this final meeting where we really had quite a large group of executives across the company.
The room was packed. There were a lot of different constituencies there, all the way from the field sales.
I mean, when it
force
comes
the
down
most
to
technical
money,
side of the company,
that's where the
you
fun
had
ends.
A lot of people very, very interested.
Steve's a big guy. Bill's in there, and you're in there with these two super famous guys who hold your destiny, and Steve is really upset that we wanted to take this risk.
Ballmer understood very well where Microsoft's bread was buttered and where the money came from. We were a company known for productivity software. He didn't want some video
But Bill
game,
Gates
or
was the
even fact
innovator,
that we
Steve
made video
Ballmer
games, to
was
threaten
the bookie,
the very lifeblood of the company.
the money maker.
Steve looked at the Xbox idea and saw insanity. He went to his whiteboard and he said, okay, what's this going to cost? What's the hard drive going to cost? What's the Ethernet port going to cost? What's the graphics chip going to cost? And he totaled it all up and said, there's no way you guys, what's your reserve for returns? Reserve for returns, what does that mean? Well, we freely admitted that we didn't understand the first thing about hardware, but we were gamers and we were game developers. Our entire careers have been built around games. We knew that 3D gaming was taking off and online gaming was just around the corner. And the best and brightest in the game development world, they were moving all their thinking from the PC to consoles. We had the opportunity to go create something that was going to take all of the equity, all the goodwill, all the technology, and all of the programming tools that had ever been created to make Windows applications and carry it forward to the living room. And that was the product that we were proposing, Xbox.
Looking back at that moment, what Steve and Bill were seeing was the future passing Microsoft by. You know, Microsoft was thought of as this dominant company of the era.
But they're losing
Success or even
speed.
survival was anything but preordained. If Microsoft didn't grab this opportunity, that Microsoft would be on the wrong side of the future.
Microsoft in
of
the
tech.
early
It made everybody
2000s
step back.
and end 90s was slowing
console
down.
business was something that we needed to seize. I think that that was where Bill and Steve realized that they needed to move forward with Xbox.
An incredibly electrifying moment.
We'd finally convinced Steve. Bill was convinced.
They've done an outstanding job so far, haven't they?
Oh,
Bill did
God.
have a view that software running on hardware
Rest in peace.
really brings some unique experiences.
No one lives
in the
forever.
home. We could start with video games, but it could go many directions from there.
We will never
It
get
was
that
really
game
an
back.
opportunity to recapture the soul that Microsoft had at the beginning, to create that revolution, to create that new platform.
We were going to do something no one else had done. We were going to launch a console from a software company. Microsoft had done nothing like that before.
And then it became clear that there was just some really big challenges for us.
At the beginning, it was about credibility.
We had a task ahead of us to ensure that we were taken seriously in the game industry.
This equation of
Especially
power,
with
performance, and price. You have to come correct on every single part of
Microsoft
that,
at the
to be
beginning
successful.
or
There
in
were
the
so many tasks
2000s.
that had to be done on both the hardware and
Ooh.
software side. We realized
I
that
know
we
the people
needed to have a
complaining
leader.
about
It was clear to all of us that that
the
person was
new
Rick
Windows,
He had asked the
but
best
some of the
questions,
old Windows
the most
versions,
insightful questions
where
that we
internet
wanted
wasn't
him to
even
be
the
part
thing
of
at the
answers.
point.
So Rick was brought in as the seasoned senior executive who had experience in hardware.
Hello,
with
Windows ME.
peripherals, mice and keyboards. And he had to construct a plan and a go-forward strategy.
My comment at the time was, I'm not big enough for this job. But a couple days later, Steve Ballmer calls me into his office and says, let's get this straight between the two of us. This is your job now.
You're making a big splash. You say you're getting into this
Congrats.
consumer market. You know, if that doesn't
Well,
work out well,
I'm sorry?
it could really give the company a huge black eye, and that would be very difficult to recover from.
The risk here is enormous, the amount of money we could lose on this project. And for me, it was fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because you got a business guy who's going to try to figure out a business model with my little team of people who help me with the hardware business. You got 4 people coming over from DirectX. None of us actually knew the rules of the game that we're playing. And we basically just stood there and looked at each other and said, oh, like, now what do we do?
We made it! Now what? That is a kind of frightening prospect. Like when you were working on this one goal, you want to reach that one goal, and then you get it. You get the goal. But where do you go from here, right? That is such a frightening prospect. And I can see that now that they have reached the point of, yes, so now what, right? It's like, it's a very, very problematic thing. You know, when you have those movies where all those different groups are banding together against the one evil guy, and they're defeating the evil guy, and every group is now like, okay, we defeated him. What we gonna do now? And they're starting to fight each other because of that. So yeah, this was very interesting. I'm looking forward to chapter 2. I will definitely put a link in the video description when it becomes available. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you leave a like on your way out. And if you're new to the channel, you want to see more reaction videos, gaming news, tips and tricks for new games, I would appreciate if you might leave a subscription. And if you ever want to catch me live, you can do so from Monday to Friday, starting at 9 a.m. East Coast time, which is 2 p.m. UK time, and 3 p.m. Central European time, over at trovo.live/ChaosMole. The link will also be in the video description. And with that said, I will see you next time. Stay safe. Bye-bye.